I sit in the quiet corner of my small room, staring at the faded wallpaper that has begun to peel at the edges. The silence feels heavy, pressing down on my chest, a silence that has followed me for years. My name is Sophia Mitchell, and for as long as I can remember, my life has been nothing but a series of sacrifices for my family. From the outside, people often thought we were a close, supportive family, but the reality was far from it. Growing up, I was the one who always put everyone else first. When my parents needed help with the house, I was the one scrubbing floors while my siblings were out with their friends. When they needed someone to run errands, I was the one skipping classes, pretending I was fine with falling behind. I never complained, because deep inside, I believed that one day, all my sacrifices would mean something. I thought my parents, my brother Ethan Carter, and my sister Madeline Carter would see how much I gave up for them. But the truth is, they never did. Every milestone in my life was quietly brushed aside so someone else could shine. When I got top grades in school, my parents barely acknowledged it. Because Ethan had just made the basketball team, and that was more exciting. When I got accepted into a university program I had worked so hard for, they didn't even celebrate because Madeline had gotten engaged. And the entire family was too busy planning her future. I told myself over and over, it's okay. They love you. They just don't show it. But deep down, a small voice whispered the truth, that I had become invisible in my own home. I remember the nights when I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was truly part of this family or just a servant who happened to share their last name. I cooked, I cleaned, I even gave up on relationships because my parents always reminded me that my duty was to my family first. If Ethan needed money, I worked extra shifts. If Madeline wanted new clothes, I gave her my savings. If my parents wanted to impress relatives, I was the one slaving away in the kitchen while they smiled and took the credit. The saddest part? I kept hoping that one day they would finally turn around and say, Sophia, we're proud of you. We see you. We love you. But those words never came. Instead, all I heard were criticisms. Why aren't you more like Madeline? Ethan is so talented. You should learn from him. Stop being dramatic, Sophia. You're fine. They didn't realize how much each word chipped away at me, how much it hollowed out my heart. Sometimes, I wondered if I was even their child at all. The way they treated me, like I was less than, like I was just a placeholder, made me question everything. But despite the pain, I kept sacrificing. I kept giving. I told myself that family means putting others before yourself, that one day it would all be worth it. But with every passing year, the weight grew heavier. Ethan flourished, Madeline blossomed, and I faded further into the background. They lived their lives openly, carelessly, while I was trapped in the shadows, holding everything together. It wasn't just the big things either. Even in small moments, I was invisible. At family dinners, I would cook the entire meal, only to sit quietly at the corner of the table while everyone praised Madeline's new hairstyle or Ethan's latest achievements. When guests came over, my parents would boast about Ethan's promotions or Madeline's beauty, but they never once mentioned me. It was as if I didn't exist, and yet, I stayed. I stayed because I was afraid. Afraid of losing the only family I had. Afraid that if I stopped giving, they would finally confirm what I had feared all along, that I wasn't truly loved. Looking back now, I see how much of myself I lost in those years. My dreams, my identity, my sense of worth, all sacrificed at the altar of family loyalty. And the cruel irony is that my loyalty was never returned. I was a ghost in my own home, present but unseen, giving but never receiving. As I sit here now, I think about the countless chances I gave them to prove me wrong. The birthdays they forgot, the achievements they ignored, the times I needed them, but they never came. I gave them everything, and in return, I got nothing but silence. But maybe, just maybe, that silence is what I needed to finally wake up. Because deep down, a storm has been building inside me. A storm made of years of neglect, years of betrayal, years of pain. And though I've spent my life sacrificing for them, I know now that something has to change. This is not just the story of sacrifices. It's the beginning of the story of how I found myself again. The story of my life has always been the same pattern. Whenever I tried to step into the light, someone else pushed me back into the shadows. And more often than not, those people were my very own siblings, Madeline Carter and Ethan Carter. From the time we were children, the differences in how we were treated were clear. Ethan, the golden boy, could do no wrong. Madeline, the beautiful one, was praised endlessly for her charm and grace. And me? I was responsible Sophia, the one expected to hold things together. It didn't matter if I achieved something worth celebrating. My accomplishments were always drowned out by theirs. When Ethan got into sports, the entire family practically revolved around his games. My parents would scream his name from the stands, wear shirts with his number on them, and host parties after his victories. Meanwhile, I was winning academic competitions, getting scholarships, and excelling in school. But instead of cheers or parties, all I got was a distracted nod. A quick good job before the conversation turned back to Ethan. I'll never forget one night when I came home with a medal from a regional science competition. My heart was pounding with excitement, ready to show them what I had accomplished. But as soon as I stepped through the door, my parents were already talking about Ethan's basketball practice. They didn't even look at the medal in my hand. And when I finally tried to show them, they brushed it off, saying, "That's nice, Sophia. But have you heard? Ethan's coach says he might get a scholarship." My medal felt heavy in my hand, not because of its weight, but because it suddenly felt meaningless. Madeline's story wasn't much different, except hers was about beauty, charm, and social approval. Whenever relatives visited, she was the one they praised. "Look at Madeline, she's so stunning. She's going to make a wonderful wife one day." Or, "Madeline lights up the room." They loved to compare us, always in her favor. "Sophia, you should smile more like Madeline. Sophia, maybe if you dressed up a little, you'd be as pretty as your sister." They didn't realize how much those words burned. Even when I achieved things Madeline could never dream of, like landing a scholarship for higher studies, the spotlight always shifted back to her. She'd walk into the room wearing a new dress or talking about some boy who liked her, and suddenly all eyes were on her again. My success evaporated like mist, forgotten in the glow of her presence. The worst part was how effortlessly they overshadowed me. Ethan never had to try. He was the star athlete, the boy everyone admired. Madeline never had to work hard either. She had natural charm and looks that people adored. But me? I spent sleepless nights studying, sacrificing my youth for grades, holding jobs to pay bills, taking care of the house so my parents wouldn't stress. And still, none of it mattered. At family gatherings, it became almost comical. I'd be in the kitchen, preparing food for everyone, making sure things ran smoothly. Meanwhile, Ethan would show up late, grin at everyone, and immediately become the center of attention. Madeline would walk in, flipping her hair, and everyone would rush to hug her, ask her questions, and shower her with compliments. I was invisible, the shadow holding the house together while the stars shined brightly in the center. The imbalance wasn't just emotional, it was financial too. I worked multiple jobs to help pay for Ethan's college expenses. My parents proudly told everyone that Ethan's hard work had earned him opportunities, but they never mentioned how I secretly slipped him money when he was short. Madeline, on the other hand, always wanted the best clothes, the newest phone, the prettiest accessories. And somehow it was me again who gave up my own savings so she could have them. There were moments when I thought maybe it was just my imagination, that maybe I was exaggerating their importance in my mind. But then reality would slap me in the face, like the time I was giving a presentation at university, one of the proudest days of my life. I invited my parents, hoping they would come see me finally in the spotlight. They didn't show up. Why? Because Ethan had a practice game that mattered more, or the time I was shortlisted for an internship that could have changed my career. I begged them to come with me to the award ceremony. They didn't. They were too busy helping Madeline shop for her engagement party. I used to tell myself, one day they'll notice. One day you'll do something so big they can't ignore you. But every time I reached for that moment, Madeline or Ethan would be there, standing in the light, pushing me back into the darkness. It wasn't just their fault, though. My parents enabled it every step of the way. They fed into the favoritism, turning a blind eye to the imbalance. If Ethan got in trouble, they defended him. If Madeline made mistakes, they excused her. But if I slipped up even once, if I dared to show weakness, they came down on me with criticism. After years of this, I began to believe maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I really was destined to live in their shadow, never worthy of attention or love. That belief ate at me, hollowed me out, and made me question my worth every single day. But deep inside, a small spark still burned. A stubborn hope that someday I would be seen, that someday I wouldn't just be the background character in my own story. That spark is what kept me going, even as I watched Ethan and Madeline live lives full of validation and admiration, while I remained invisible. Looking back now, I realize that overshadowing wasn't just about attention, it was about erasure. They erased me piece by piece until I was nothing more than a shadow in my own home. And though I stayed quiet for years, something inside me was changing. I was beginning to see that I couldn't live in the dark forever, because every shadow eventually demands light. For years, I told myself stories to survive. Maybe they love me but don't know how to show it. Maybe my turn will come. Maybe if I keep giving, they'll finally appreciate me. But there comes a moment in every life when illusions shatter. For me, that moment arrived like a thunderclap, tearing away the blindfold I had worn for so long. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, my graduation. I had worked day and night, sacrificed sleep, hobbies, relationships, even my health to get that degree. I imagined my family cheering for me, clapping as I walked across the stage. I imagined looking into the audience and seeing my parents' proud faces, Ethan's thumbs up, Madeline's bright smile. I thought, finally, this is my moment. They can't ignore this. But when the day came, I looked into the sea of faces and realized something devastating. They weren't there. Not a single one of them. The seats I had reserved for my family sat empty, like a cruel symbol of the love I had been denied my whole life. After the ceremony, while my classmates hugged their parents, took photos with flowers, and celebrated with laughter, I stood alone, clutching my diploma with trembling hands. I smiled for the camera when professors congratulated me, but inside I was breaking. That night I went home, hoping maybe there was a surprise waiting for me. Maybe they had planned something special. Instead, I walked into the house to find everyone sitting in the living room, laughing and chatting about Madeline's upcoming engagement party. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Oh, Sophia, don't start," my mother said. "We couldn't miss the cake tasting with Madeline. Her wedding is far more important right now." "Don't be selfish. That word hit me like a punch. I had given everything to this family, and the one time I asked for their presence, their support, I was told I was selfish. Ethan chuckled and added, "You'll have plenty of graduations. Madeline only gets married once." The room erupted in laughter, but I didn't laugh. Something inside me cracked. For the first time, I didn't swallow the hurt. I didn't force a smile. I just walked away, tears burning down my cheeks. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and the truth became clear. They were never going to see me. No matter what I achieved, no matter how much I sacrificed, I would never be enough for them. I wasn't the golden boy. I wasn't the beautiful daughter. I was just Sophia, the invisible one, the backup plan, the servant in a house that should have been my home. The breaking point didn't come all at once. It was a slow build, years of small cuts finally bleeding me dry. But that night it became undeniable. I replayed every moment in my mind. The birthdays forgotten, the achievements ignored, the times I was told I wasn't good enough. I realized I had been lying to myself, pretending their neglect was love. It wasn't. It was betrayal. For the first time, anger began to rise in me, hot, bitter, and unstoppable. Not the kind of anger that makes you scream, but the kind that changes you forever. I wasn't angry because they missed my graduation. I was angry because missing my graduation was just one more proof of a lifetime of disregard. I started noticing things I had ignored before. Like how my parents always introduced me as our responsible daughter, but introduced Ethan as our talented son, and Madeline as our beautiful daughter. Responsible. It was just another word for boring, invisible, unworthy. I remembered how, as kids, when Ethan broke a vase, they laughed and said, "Boys will be boys." But when I once accidentally spilled juice on the carpet, I was grounded for a week. When Madeline failed a test, they said, "She's under pressure, poor thing." But when I got a B instead of an A, they scolded me for being careless. The truth screamed at me now. I was never the priority. I was never the favorite. I wasn't even equal. I was the one holding the family together, and they were the ones taking me for granted. The breaking point grew sharper when I overheard a conversation one evening. I was coming downstairs when I heard Madeline say, "Sophia doesn't need attention. She's fine on her own. She likes being in the background." And my mother replied, "Exactly. Thank God for Sophia. She's the glue. Without her, none of us could live this way." They said it like a compliment, but to me, it felt like a curse. I wasn't a daughter. I wasn't a sister. I was glue. Something invisible, only noticed when it's gone. That night, I broke down completely. I cried until my chest ached, until my eyes were swollen shut. But when the tears finally stopped, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: clarity. I couldn't keep living this way. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for people who didn't care if I lived or died. I realized that love is not supposed to feel like emptiness. Family is not supposed to feel like prison. The breaking point was painful, but it was also liberating. It was the first step toward reclaiming myself. For years, I had thought my worth depended on them, on their validation, on their love. But in that moment, I understood something vital. My worth was mine to define. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know how I would confront them or where I would go. But I knew one thing with certainty. I couldn't stay invisible anymore, because once you see the truth, you can never unsee it. And the truth was this: my family had never truly loved me. And if I wanted to survive and if I wanted to live, I would have to love myself enough to walk away. After my graduation, something inside me shifted permanently. For the first time in my life, I stopped making excuses for them. I stopped pretending their neglect was accidental. I stopped lying to myself that one day they would change. No, they wouldn't change. Not unless I forced them to see the truth. The opportunity to finally confront everything came sooner than I expected. It was at Madeline Carter's engagement party, the grand event my family had poured their energy into while ignoring my biggest achievement. The irony wasn't lost on me. Everyone was dressed in their finest, the house filled with music, laughter, and the smell of expensive catering. I had worked behind the scenes for days, helping decorate, organizing details, because my parents insisted I do my part. But as I stood in that crowded room, watching Madeline twirl in her glittering dress while Ethan cracked jokes and soaked up the attention, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was it. This was the night I would no longer stay invisible. When the toasts began, my father cleared his throat and raised his glass. He spoke glowingly of Ethan, of Madeline, of how proud he was to have such talented and beautiful children. My name wasn't even mentioned. Not once. I was standing right there, holding a tray of champagne flutes, and it was like I didn't exist, and that was the moment I decided I would no longer stay silent. When the microphone was passed for open remarks, everyone expected more sweet words about the happy couple, but I walked forward, my heart pounding, and took the mic in my hand. The room fell silent, dozens of eyes turning toward me. For once, they were looking at me, but not with admiration. With confusion, I smiled tightly and began, "Since everyone is celebrating family tonight, maybe it's time we talk about what family really means." My parents exchanged nervous glances. Ethan smirked like I was about to embarrass myself. Madeline twirled a strand of her hair, clearly annoyed that I was taking attention away from her big night. I didn't care, I continued, my voice strong even though my hands trembled. All my life I've sacrificed everything for this family. I've cleaned your messes, given up my dreams, worked to support you, and stood in the shadows while you celebrated Ethan's successes and Madeline's beauty. And in return? You ignored me. You dismissed me. You made me invisible. Gasps rippled through the room. Relatives shifted uncomfortably. Ethan muttered, "Oh, here we go," under his breath. But I kept going. You think family means using one person until they break. You think family means celebrating only the children who fit your idea of perfect. But let me tell you something. Family is supposed to be about love, respect, and support. And I've never had that here. Not once. My mother tried to interrupt, whispering sharply, "Sophia, sit down. You're embarrassing us." But I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "No. The embarrassment isn't mine. It's yours. Because the truth is, you failed me. You failed to see me. You failed to love me the way parents should love their child." The room was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. I turned to Madeline. "Do you know what it's like to have your entire life ignored just so you can shine? To be told over and over that you're the pretty one, the special one, while I was left to carry the burden? You've taken and taken, Madeline, but you've never once given back. You stood on my shoulders to get where you are, and you never even noticed I was holding you up." Madeline's face flushed red, her fiancé staring at her in shock. Then I turned to Ethan. "And you got every chance, every praise, every support, while I worked behind the scenes to make sure you never fell. You wore the crown, but I was the one keeping it from tipping. Did you ever once thank me? No. You laughed while I faded away." Ethan's jaw tightened, his smirk gone. I could feel years of pain, years of silence pouring out of me, unstoppable now. You all thought I'd stay quiet forever, that I'd keep sacrificing, keep smiling, keep fading into the background. But you were wrong. I'm done being your shadow. I'm done being invisible. I set the microphone down on the table with a sharp thud. For a moment, no one moved. My family sat frozen, the truth hanging in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Then whispers started. Guests murmured to each other. A few even looked at me with sympathy. And I realized something important. I wasn't the one who looked weak that night. They did. For once, everyone saw the truth of who they were and what they had done. My parents tried to recover, stammering excuses about me being overly emotional, but no one believed them. The mask had cracked. Their perfect family image was shattered. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful. I had spoken my truth, and they couldn't silence me anymore. Later that night, my mother cornered me in the kitchen, her voice low and sharp. "How dare you humiliate us like that in front of everyone?" I looked at her calmly and said, "No. How dare you humiliate me my entire life?" Tonight was just me finally standing up for myself, and I walked away, leaving her speechless. That night, I realized something life-changing. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their validation, their praise, their love, because I had found something stronger, my own voice. For years, I had been afraid to confront them, afraid of losing my family. But the truth was, I had already lost them long ago. All I did that night was finally acknowledge it. I went to bed with a strange sense of peace. Yes, there would be consequences. Yes, they would be angry. But I didn't care. For the first time ever, I wasn't afraid, because standing up for myself wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. After that explosive night at Madeline's engagement party, I knew things could never go back to the way they were. Something inside me had shifted permanently. For years, I had lived in the shadows, defined by their neglect and rejection. But now I had stepped into the light, and I wasn't going to let anyone push me back into the darkness. The days immediately after the party were tense. My parents avoided me, still humiliated by the scene I had caused. Madeline refused to answer my messages. And Ethan only sent a short, cold text telling me I had ruined everything. But instead of breaking me, their silence felt like a release. For once, I wasn't chasing after their approval. For once, I wasn't apologizing for existing. I realized something important. I had been free all along. I just hadn't chosen to live like it. So I made a decision. If my family couldn't accept me, then I would create a new life on my own terms. No more waiting for their recognition. No more sacrificing myself for scraps of affection. It was time to build a future where I wasn't invisible, where I was celebrated for who I was. The first step was small but powerful. I packed up my belongings and moved out of my parents' house. For years, that house had been a prison, every wall echoing with reminders of my second-class status. Carrying those boxes into my tiny rented apartment felt like shedding chains. The space wasn't perfect. The paint was chipped, the furniture secondhand. But it was mine. Every corner represented independence. Every breath inside those walls was freedom, at night. Lying in bed, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city, I realized how peaceful life could be when you weren't constantly begging for love from people unwilling to give it. The next step was reclaiming the dreams I had abandoned. Ever since I was young, I had loved writing, but I had put it aside to babysit, cook, clean, and sacrifice for Ethan and Madeline. Now, with no one holding me back, I returned to it. I poured my heart into journals, essays, and stories, using words to heal wounds that had festered for years. One afternoon, sitting in a small cafe, I submitted an article about resilience to an online magazine. Weeks later, when I saw my name published for the first time, tears filled my eyes. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about finally honoring the part of myself I had silenced for too long. Meanwhile, my family's world began to unravel. Madeline's fiancé, shocked by the truths revealed at the engagement party, started questioning her selfish behavior. Rumors spread through the extended family about how Ethan and Madeline had treated me. For once, the spotlight wasn't flattering to them. It exposed them. And my parents? They tried to carry on as if nothing had happened, but their carefully crafted image of the perfect family was broken. I no longer played my role as the quiet scapegoat. Without me holding everything together, the cracks widened. But here's the thing. I no longer cared. Their drama, their denial, their judgment, it wasn't mine to carry anymore. Months passed, and I grew stronger every day. I learned how to cook for myself without rushing to feed others first. I decorated my apartment with small plants and handwritten quotes that reminded me of my worth. I made new friends who saw me, truly saw me, in a way my family never had. For the first time, laughter filled my life not because I was pretending, but because I was genuinely happy. One evening, I sat on my balcony as the sun set, painting the sky with colors of gold and pink. I thought about the girl I had once been, the girl who sat quietly at Madeline's parties, the girl who sacrificed everything for Ethan, the girl who believed her parents would one day notice her. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who had faced betrayal, spoken her truth, and chosen herself. The ultimate test came when I received an invitation months later, Madeline's wedding. My parents wanted me there to avoid gossip. For a moment, old habits whispered, maybe I should go, maybe I should play nice. But then I remembered that microphone in my hand, the strength in my voice, the peace I felt walking away from their judgment. So, I smiled, tore the invitation in half, and threw it in the trash. Because I no longer needed a seat at their table. I was building my own. Today, when I look back, I don't see tragedy anymore. I see transformation. Yes, my family betrayed me. Yes, they tried to erase me. But in doing so, they forced me to discover the power I carried all along. Sophia Mitchell is no longer invisible. She is no longer the forgotten daughter, the sacrificial lamb, or the silent shadow. She is strong, independent, and free. And though I walked away from my family, I didn't walk away broken. I walked away whole. I walked away with peace. I walked away into a brand new beginning.